Today's episode is inspired by a message from one of our listeners who's been exploring concessive clauses and finding them a bit tricky to use naturally in conversation. If you've ever wondered how to say things like strange as it may seem or try as he might without getting lost halfway through the sentence, you're definitely not alone. Although they seem tricky, in this episode, we'll break down these advanced structures for you, look at how they really work, and most importantly, show you how to use them with confidence. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hi, I'm Reza.
And my name's Craig.
And with nearly 60 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. Craig, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, my friend. Happy Wednesday to you and to all our lovely listeners. We're recording this before the Easter holidays in 2026, but you'll probably, definitely be listening to this after the Easter holidays. So, future Reza, how was your Easter?
Hopefully the Easter bunny was generous to me.
Hope you got lots of chocolate Easter eggs this year, but obviously we don't know yet because it's not Easter. What's first this week, Reza?
Well, actually, there's kind of a connection between Easter for me and an email that we got from Carmen from Malaga. And the connection is I'd really like to be in Malaga at Easter. I've been told that the processions in Malaga are particularly spectacular for Easter. So although Easter has now finished when you're listening to this, remember we're recording it before, and I envy Carmen down in Malaga who will get to see those great processions.
Absolutely. So to future Carmen, I hope you had a good Easter. Friend of the show, Carmen, and a lovely human being, sent us the idea for today's podcast. And Carmen says in her email, I've been studying concessive clauses, and I found them difficult to use spontaneously in conversation. I'm not sure whether you've ever dedicated an episode to explaining them, but it could be an idea for your podcast. Yes, it definitely could. Carmen, thank you very much. And Reza, in her email, Carmen gave us some examples of what she means. Could you read them for us?
Yes, so here are Carmen's examples. They're very good examples. Strange as it may seem. So in spoken English, it's probably more common to say, although it may seem strange. She also gave this example. The flat is in a lovely area, if a bit far from the city centre. So that expression, if a bit, can be used to show a contrast or a concession. Craig, you think I use that expression quite a lot?
No, this is what Carmen says. Carmen said in her email that she's noticed that you tend to use if a bit from time to time. So I think that's very astute, very clever of Carmen to focus on the language you're using and notice that it's a concessive clause.
You're right, Carmen. Wow, you are observant. I do like that expression, if a bit. Here's another one. Try as he might, he just couldn't find his keys anywhere. So in spoken English, you might hear more commonly, even though he tried hard. Try as he might. And her last example is, confident as she was, she soon came unstuck in the interview. That means, although she was confident. To come unstuck means that you get into trouble.
So those were Carmen's examples, and we will expand on those later. Now, we have spoken about concessive clauses quite recently, albeit briefly. Did you see what I did there?
So you did there with albeit? Yeah.
Albeit, if you want to know how to use that word in a concessive clause, go to episode 615, in which we explained linking words like though, although, and even though, and albeit. Go to inglespodcast.com/615. Now, concessive clauses are very common in formal English, and they're also quite frequently used in written English. But when we speak, when we use spoken English, they are often simplified, and we will explain that to you as well. But let's start with the basics, Reza. What is a concessive clause?
Well, a concessive clause simply expresses a contrast. It's something surprising or unexpected. So the basic idea is you have X and Y. So although X, for example, although I'm poor, Y, I'm happy. So although X and the other idea, Y. Here's a few more examples. Although it may seem strange, I enjoy working late. Even though she was tired, she kept working. She was very confident. She soon came unstuck in the interview, though.
So we can upgrade those basic sentences that Reza just mentioned, and we can use inversion to make them a bit more advanced, a bit more formal. So let's take those three and see how we can make them a bit more upgraded, a bit more formal. Although it may seem strange, I enjoy working late. Strange as it may seem, I enjoy working late. Or strange though it may seem, I enjoy working late. So we can choose to use though or as, and that makes the sentence just a little bit more formal. Strange as it may seem, I enjoy working late. Or strange though it may seem, I enjoy working late. Reza, what's the second sentence upgraded?
So the standard version was, even though she was tired, she kept on working. You could change it to an inverted, more advanced version. Tired though she was, or tired as she was, she kept on working.
And the third one, the standard version, was she was very confident. She soon came unstuck in the interview, though. Now we could make that more formal using an inversion. Confident as she was, she soon came unstuck in the interview. Or confident though she was, she soon came unstuck in the interview. These advanced inverted forms, they're more formal. They're also a little more literary and a bit more dramatic, but less common in everyday speech. And there are different kinds or different patterns of inversion, aren't there, Reza?
Yes, so the first one that we've just seen, I don't know if you noticed, but they're all similar. They started with an adjective. For example, strange or cold or tired or confident. Then we have the word though or as. Then we have a subject and verb. So for example, you could begin strange, though it may seem, or cold as it was, or hard, though she worked.
Here's a true sentence for you, Reza. Strange as it may seem, I've started going to the gym. There you are.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I feel terrible. Cold as it was, we went for a walk on the beach. Hard as she worked, she couldn't get a promotion. So the meaning there is although or even though. Even though she worked hard, she couldn't get a promotion.
So the key point to remember is that this is really an inversion. You wouldn't normally begin a sentence in English with an adjective. That's not the normal way. Normally you begin with a subject and verb. Yeah, you say something like, although she, there's our subject, was, there's our verb, and then an adjective, although she was tired. But we're beginning here with the adjective, tired though she was, for example. So the key thing is it's inverted. We're putting the adjective first, which is not the normal way of doing it. So it gives a bit more dramatic emphasis to the fact that there is a concessive clause here, that there's some kind of contrast.
Let's take a quick break here because I know you listen to this podcast to take your English to the next level. But what about your speaking? Is your fluency improving? Are you happy with your speaking skills? My conversation course focuses on making you a more confident and more fluent English speaker. You'll join me and a small group of motivated students, and we'll meet on Zoom and have topical discussions, role plays, debates, and presentations that will expand your vocabulary and help you express yourself effectively in English. So be proactive and take the first step towards becoming a confident and fluent English speaker. Send me an email today to craig@inglespodcast.com and I'll send you details of the next online conversation course. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the podcast. Right, so that's the first group or pattern that Reza mentioned, the adjective, and then though or as, and then the subject and the verb. There's another group, another kind of pattern to this, and that's putting the verb first. So it's a verb-based inversion. So you'd put the verb and then though or as, then the subject, and then might or may. So let's look at an example. Try as he might, he couldn't open the door. Or with though, try though he might, he couldn't open the door. Which really means it doesn't matter how hard he tried, or no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't open the door. So once more, try as he might, or try though he might, he couldn't open the door. And the more simpler, the more basic way of saying it, it doesn't matter how hard he tried, or no matter how hard he tried, that would be more common in spoken English. This is what people would mostly say in conversation. Even though he tried hard, he couldn't open the door. Can you think of any more examples?
Yes, here's another example or two. Search though they might, they found nothing. Or you could say as instead of though. Search as they might, they found nothing. In other words, it means, although they searched hard, they found nothing. And here's another one. Argue though he may, or argue as he may, I won't change my mind. Which means, although he may argue, or although he argues a lot, I won't change my mind.
Now, Carmen mentioned that Reza tends to use if a bit from time to time. For example, the flat is in a lovely area, if a bit far from the city centre. So this structure is if plus an adjective, and it means although or even if slightly. For example, it's a good plan if risky. So although it's risky, it's a good plan. Yep, there's your contrast. And of course, you can add an adverbial expression to this to make it a bit softer, maybe not quite as hard. For example, you could say a bit or a little or quite. It's a good plan if a bit risky, or if a little risky, or if quite risky. Can you think of more examples?
For example, the film was interesting, if a little slow. It lasted 3 hours. Yeah, I like my films a bit shorter. So there's a concessive clause. Remember, there's always like the good aspect and the bad aspect, or the positive and the negative. Interesting, but slow. The film was interesting, if a little slow. Or he's friendly, if sometimes a bit quiet. Or she's a good CEO, if occasionally unpredictable.
There are also some fixed concessive expressions, and this word concessive that Reza explained earlier, it's a grammar word, it's called meta-language, and this idea of concession, you can have fixed expressions that use concession in what they're saying, and these are quite advanced, they're quite formal, and we tend to use them occasionally in speeches, formal writing, maybe business meetings, that kind of thing. And one example is, be that as it may. Be that as it may. Remember, you can see all of the notes, all of these expressions in the show notes to the podcast. Go to inglespodcast.com, AIRC618. If you're finding this a bit tricky, a bit difficult, why not go and read the notes as we're speaking, and that might help you to understand a bit better. So be that as it may really means nevertheless, or even so. For example, the weather forecast looks terrible. Be that as it may, the event will go ahead as scheduled. So you could substitute be that as it may for nevertheless or even so. But be that as it may just makes it sound a little bit more formal, a little bit more literary.
Here's another one. She has more experience than the rest of the team. Be that as it may, everyone's input should be considered.
And another example, the results were not what we hoped for. Be that as it may, we can learn valuable lessons from the process.
Another one which is very similar is come what may, which means more or less the same. It means no matter, or it doesn't matter what happens. Come what may. For example, come what may, we'll finish this project. So come what may, we could get sick, we could have a lack of funding, they could try to close us down. We don't care. We'll finish this project, come what may.
Or you could say they were determined to succeed, come what may. Whatever happens, come what may.
Or she decided to follow her dream, come what may.
And another example of a fixed concessive expression is say what you will. Say what you will. Say what you will. Which means you can criticize if you like, but, or however, blah, blah, blah. For example, say what you will about him, he's reliable. Or say what you will about him, but he's reliable.
Say what you will, but that restaurant serves excellent food.
And another example, say what you will, but I'm proud of what we've achieved with this podcast. Aren't you, Reza?
I second that, for sure.
Say what you will. Whatever criticism you have, I'm proud of it.
And some people will say some pretty bad things.
There are always some naysayers. So if you want to use some of these inversions in your formal English, in your writing, learn 3 or 4 fixed patterns, fixed expressions. For example, strange as it may seem, blah, blah, blah. Or strange though it may seem. Try though he might. Or try as he might. Or be that as it may. So if you have some of these fixed expressions in your active vocabulary, then you can pull them out and impress people when the context is there for you.
When the context is there for you. Yes. Word of warning, don't overuse them. As Craig just said, context is key. So for example, be that as it may, it's fairly dramatic. So don't use it if you shouldn't be dramatic. For example, imagine someone asks you, would you like a cup of tea? You could say, well, although I love tea, I don't fancy one right now. Yeah, but imagine you say, oh no. And the person says, you love tea, don't you? Don't say, be that as it may, because there's really no need to be so dramatic. Be that as it may, I don't want the tea right now. You sound ridiculous. There's no reason to be so dramatic in that context. So it's all about context. So these special ones that we mentioned near the end, use them to be a little bit dramatic.
Yeah, it's like if I said to Reza, did you get your TV working? You had a problem with your TV. I'd expect Reza to say something like, well, I tried, but it didn't work. And not, try as I might, I didn't manage to fix it. I don't think that would be very suitable for the context of informal spoken English. So it's a very good warning there. Be careful when you use these. And remember, use them in situations where you're preparing a speech, for example. Maybe you're speaking at a formal engagement or a formal dinner. You're making a presentation at work, perhaps, and you want to sound a bit more formal. You're having a meeting and you want to impress people, perhaps. And of course, also in formal writing. If you're writing a formal email or you're taking an exam, then they are very, very useful. But don't force them in conversation. That's the main point there.
So here's a quick recap of what we have just explained. You could say, strange as it may seem, as a more formal or advanced version of the more natural, although it may seem strange.
Another example, the formal advanced expression would be try though he might. And in natural speech, even though he tried. So try though he might, he couldn't fix the TV. Much better to say in spoken English, even though Reza tried, he couldn't fix it.
Another one, cold as it was, means the same as although it was cold. For example, cold as it was, the intrepid explorers went further towards the South Pole.
And with Carmen's example with if a bit, you could say if a bit expensive, which actually you could use in formal English and informal English. It's quite neutral, isn't it? If a bit expensive. Yeah, we went back to that restaurant, if a bit expensive. So that would work in spoken English, informal spoken English, and also in writing. But now it's your turn to practice your English. We would love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for future episodes, then please let us know. And you can reach us by voice message if you go to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. That's our preferred method of communication. Send us a voice message so that we can hear your English and include you in a future podcast with your message. Reza, how can people reach us by email?
You could send us an email, as Carmen did. Maybe emails can be quite handy if it's a specific grammar point you want to talk about, like Carmen. For example, concessive clauses is quite good to write down your thoughts. Then send an email to craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're a Spanish speaker and you want to improve your English with free and paid resources, visit the Mansion Inglés website at mansioningles.com. And for paid products, you can browse the online store at store.mansioningles.net.
If you'd like a full transcription of the audio of this podcast, you might consider joining our Patreon program. And as a member of Patreon, you'll receive the full audio transcription by email every week of the podcast episodes so that you can read every single word that we say. And you'll also get a monthly invitation to join Craig for an informal chat on Zoom to practice your speaking. So if you're interested in making a small donation, you could have a look at the link in the show notes. It's to patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
Yep, and I want to say hi to people who attended the last Zoom session, and that's Denise, Nacho, Sara, Pilar from France, and Francisco. So thank you to you for coming. It was lovely to see more people coming along to the Zoom chats. They're very informal. There's no lesson. There's no formal concessive clauses and inversions in these chats. We just talk about the weather and other stuff. And even if you come just for 5 or 10 minutes to say hello, it'll be really nice to put a face to your name so that we know who you are. So come along to the next Zoom chat, and I'll be sending an email to all Patreon supporters very soon. Reza, who have recently decided to support the podcast?
So our most recent sponsors, but not all our sponsors, we can't mention all their names. This month, we've been joined by Pablo Albert and Sue Chen. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to all our long-standing Patreon supporters.
Yes, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you very much. In next week's episode, we're going woke. We're speaking about gender-neutral English and modern vocabulary in an age of equality. So please join us next week for that discussion and some useful vocabulary. Until then, have a lovely week ahead. Thank you for listening this week. It's goodbye from Reza.
And it's bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.